I had been in an editorial role already for 7 years in India Today, because 1988 I became features editor in India Today, and my first, in fact, editorial responsibilities besides my own reporting and writing were sports and book section, and then foreign affairs like that. So it went up like that.
But for
Now,
print
now,
specifically.
now, Express, by the time I came there, I was still quite young. I was 38. A lot of the people there had been my contemporaries as reporters. So I had to also ease myself into the place. Uh, but you learn in various places. So the skills I had learned as a reporter in the Express, I had not forgotten. I'd taken them to India Today. And what I learned at India Today now, by way of getting more depth for stories, reaching out to more sources, making sure your stories are more balanced, always listen to the other side, uh, those values then came along. And I think the other thing that we learned at India Today was to build a newsroom, to build a new young team. And we started that process in the Express. And I think it took about 3 years or so. And when it came up, it became the best team in the country by far. And frankly, it remains the best team in the country by far even now. And I'd say that best team besides what we have built at the print. So we are the best. That is the second best, but both in a way have the same roots. Indian media, news media is a very crowded place. And it's a place crowded by market leaders. So not only are there national market leaders like the Times of India Group, for example, uh, but there are also regional market leaders. So Express's problem was it wasn't the leader anywhere. Uh, so if you look at Mumbai, Times of India is the market leader. You look at any place in the south, the Hindu is the market leader. You look at the north, the Tribune is the market leader. You look at Kolkata and the east, the Telegraph is the market leader. So the Express was not a market leader anywhere. But it's also true that through its history, Express had never been the market leader anywhere. There was a time when it had the largest net circulation nationally because it had so many editions. But even then, in no center was it number one. So now to try and become number one in any center, I figured was impractical. And even if you did, the costs it would entail were going to be unaffordable. For example, the Times of India had started this business of selling the newspaper very cheap, 1 rupee 75 paisa with some freebies, invitation price, and all that. So if we had done that, we would have got pauperized. And I think a couple of centers we were doing it, that in Chandigarh and Pune. So we figured, and this is something you learn on the job, that Express had commanded a share of mind space much bigger than its numbers. So what was the lesson there? The lesson there was that besides sheer numbers, there is another set of people called who are now called influencers. Right? 20 years back, nobody used the expression influencers. So there was this undefined concept that people whose minds matter. So if you take that mind space, then other people's numbers don't matter so much because it'll take too long and costs too much to match other people's numbers. But you can outmatch them in mind space. So at the Express, we upped our quality, we invested in our journalism, we stopped reducing our cover prices. In fact, we started upping our cover prices that we live with a lower circulation. But anybody who matters in the country should read the Indian Express. And that I think it took a few years, but it got done and it remains done. And frankly, some of that is what we are doing at the print as well. But one essential part of doing that is to make sure that you are unhyphenated, which means you cannot be labeled as left or right, pro this or anti that. At the same time, you don't have to be neutral. Neutral is a news agency. We are not. We are never to be a news agency. So take a position on every story, on every issue, based on the facts as you can find them and check them out, and also based on what you think is right without any prejudice. You will not always get it right. Sometimes you will get it wrong. But even Sachin Tendulkar did not bat at 100%. No, his average was 53 or 50, 51. Even Donald Bradman did not bat at 100%. So you are allowed to make a few mistakes as long as those are a few mistakes and those are genuine mistakes. Well, frankly, as I learned the job, as I grew in the job, and as I realized what it meant, I can now say that now that I know what it would have entailed, I would not have done it because it was too tough, it was too challenging. But I wasn't designed to be the CEO of a company, right? It's just that the paper and the company got into a crisis at that point. Vivek Goenka was overseas for various reasons. So somebody needed to protect the institution. Now, I did it to give you a very simple explanation. I took a second job of CEO because I loved my first job as editor-in-chief too much. And the only way I could keep that job was if the paper would survive. And at this point, the only way the paper would survive was if somebody would put his foot in the breach. So when I took up that responsibility, I did not know the difference between debit and credit. Seriously. But then it picked up and I learned. But I must say, they were dilemmas and they were conflicts. And they were risky calls. For example, call to say that we will forget lowering our cover prices, we will now start increasing our cover prices. That circulation revenue should be a particular percentage minimum of our overall revenues. That was very counterintuitive at that point. And a lot of the people in marketing and sales thought that was a nutty idea. So there were risks, but I think the other tension, which is the conflict between the church and the state, the conflict between commercial interests and editorial vision or editorial principles, that was there. And I did say at some point that, look, there is still a Chinese wall. There is a Chinese wall between management and the editorial, and I'm sitting on top of that wall, right? But it did not become such a formidable challenge because I must give credit where it's due. The owner never interfered. The owner never said, if you take this decision, we will suffer commercially. And I will give you an example. You are in Maharashtra, aren't you?
Yes, we are in Maharashtra.
So you will know that story that I think about 8 or 10 years ago, there was a big scandal of paid news in Maharashtrian press. Yes. I think it was during the municipal elections of Maharashtra, in the cities of Maharashtra. So when that campaign was beginning, for that week, I was in Davos. So this was January 3rd week. And I got a call from my office, from the person who used to assist me on the corporate side. In fact, she works with us now at the print. And she called me and she said that, look, marketing has a proposal from a particular party to take paid interviews from their candidates in Lok Sabha, our Marathi paper. Paid interviews, obviously without disclosure that these are paid interviews, but these are interviews with candidates, and this is 5 crore rupees or something like that.
Okay.
So I did not have to think. I did not have to call Vivek Goenka to check. I said, say no. So she, just to caution me, said, 5 crores is $1 million. So I said, look, say no. In the course of time, we'll realize it's the best $1 million we lost. Now, what happened? Within a month of that, these exposes came out. I think P. Sainath carried out these exposes in the Hindu and elsewhere about this massive paid news during municipal elections in the media in Maharashtra. Only one paper stayed out of it. That was Lok Satta. So was it worth more than $1 million or not?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, but if I'd had it at the back of mind a concern that what will the shareholders say, what will the owner say, 5 crore rupees is a lot of money for a newspaper economics, that too 10, 12 years back. So, but nobody questioned it. Nobody asked me anything. So you could take your own call. And ultimately, you learn another thing to do, that was management. But essentially, my instinct was editorial, and nobody interfered with that. Well, I think there are other people who might have done that, say Arun Puri at India Today, but those are owners. As a professional, yes, I was the first one, but I had the owner's full faith and trust and complete non-interference. So yes, that's what it was, and I think look, times were very tough, but as an old friend of mine always says, an American friend of mine, no matter how tough the times, tomorrow they'll be your good old days. So we can now tell stories about those, because ultimately it all worked out all right, because a great institution which are greatly imperiled in 2000, by 2008-9 had been secured, had been consolidated, and by the time I gave up management, was in very healthy state, and is in very healthy state. It became debt free. It had cash in the bank. So I think somebody asked me once, and I've used this line often after that. Somebody said, कि यार तुम लोग ना तो on the one hand बताते हो और ना on the other hand बताते हो, तुम सीधा कोई चीज के ऊपर position ले लेते हो. So my response to him was, अरे भाई, on the one hand is the Times of India, on the other hand is the Hindustan Times. So we have to find something else to say. So I think, look, important thing is to look at the facts, and you have to look at the facts clinically. If you looked at the nuclear deal, and if you accepted the fact that Cold War had ended, that the Cold War had ended 15 years back, and maybe the wrong side won, because the Indian intellectual discourse was mostly left of center and mostly anti-American and pro-Soviet. So maybe the wrong side won, but the Soviets lost. Soviet Union is not there. It's a unipolar world. So India also has to change accordingly. The second thing was that, and there were leaders in India who recognized it. So Manmohan Singh and Narasimha Rao in 91 knew, they had intellect, that you cannot open up India's economy to the market and yet continue to be anti-Western forever, chronically. So we saw the nuclear deal as a big strategic shift for India. We never saw the nuclear deal as being about energy. And we never saw the nuclear deal as being about weapons. We saw nuclear deal about being a strategic mindset shift. It was the first treaty of any kind that India was going to sign with America in so many decades. It was, and this treaty was a strategic treaty. So this was a big shift. And everybody in any authority knew this was a good idea. So, so the BJP, which called it such a bad idea, Sushma Swaraj said in Parliament that this is like Emperor Jahangir allowing East India Company to come and trade in India. But the same BJP then embraced the deal and took it forward. And Sushma Swaraj, as foreign minister, embraced the deal and took it forward. So we knew that these were the facts. Now, a lot of the criticism was coming from old style herd mentality, which is, it's fashionable to be anti-American, right? And it's safe to be anti-American, right? If something is being done with America, and the funny things happen. When that happens, then you see people who are otherwise nuclear pacifists who say nuclear weapons are an obscenity, they are saying, oh, but what will happen? This will compromise India's nuclear weapons, right? It's like now you find many people saying, oh, you're buying these Rafales from France at this price. Why are you buying only few? You should have bought 126. These are all pacifists who otherwise say, don't spend a paisa on defense, spend on education, spend on this, spend on that, give Kashmir to Pakistan, let the Chinese take what they have, right? Don't stop fighting, let Manipur become independent, let Nagaland become independent, let India be balkanized. The same people are now saying, no, we needed 126 Rafales because without that, India's security is imperiled. So I have to say this, and this is a line I've used often in my newsrooms, and I used to use in the Express, I use it also now, that as journalists, we must never switch off our bullshit detector. So when I find somebody who's a lifelong nuclear pacifist, or lifelong nuclear and non-proliferator, coming up to say this will compromise India's nuclear weapons, I'll say, bah, right? I know where they are coming from. And the same thing applied to the Anna movement. Because if you saw the Anna movement was very elitist. It talked of the poor, but very few participants were poor. They were urban, they were elite. And look at the kind of Shivji ki Barat they gathered around them. There was all kinds of people, from Prashant Bhushan on the left to Baba Ramdev on the right. There was nothing in common with them, between them, except the idea that they should bring down the UPA government. In politics, that's okay. It's perfectly legitimate for an opposition to bring down the government of the day. But these people were not the opposition. And their pretense was not that of the opposition. Their pretense was of being non-political and of being anti-corruption activists who had no interest in politics or power. So we said that is wrong. No, we didn't say doing this is wrong. We said that claim is wrong. Mm-hmm. That claim is wrong. And to then say that everything is corrupt. So in fact, I wrote 2 articles at that point that you can check in my national interest column. One was called Arvind Chitrakatha. So that was based on this small book called Swarajya that Arvind Kejriwal had written, giving his concept of Swarajya. And I said this, and he had drawn parallels with Vaishali of 3rd century BC. So that's why I said this is Arvind Chitrakatha, that, you can't run a modern democracy like Vaishali in 3rd century BC. And Vaishali, in any case, spent all its time arguing with itself while Magad came and rolled it over and massacred everybody. So, and the other article was on the Jan Lokpal bill, that, everybody was saying Jan Lokpal bill, but funnily, nobody had bothered to read it. And I read the Jan Lokpal bill, and I called many people on TV also, TV anchors who were promoting it, that तुमने पढ़ा है कि Indian Constitution में हो ही नहीं सकता. It is not possible. Because to say that our Lokpal members will be 3 Nobel Prize winners and 4 Magsaysay Award winners, what kind of constitution allows that? And then to say every neighbor can spy on his neighbor and make CDs of that and send to Jan Lokpal, then Jan Lokpal will prosecute, it will also try. So the appeal, vakil, dalil, sab ek hai. And if it catches somebody, then 10% of whatever money it's supposed to have saved on corruption will go to Jan Lokpal. That means there is a vested interest in convicting everybody, right? So this is like North Korea. Every neighbor will be spying on every neighbor. So in fact, I said in that article that do 2 things. One, buy shares of a company called Moser Bayer, because Moser Bayer, now it's defunct. Moser Bayer makes CDs. Okay. Because everybody will be making CDs on everybody, right? So there'll be a boom in CD business. Second, buy shares of DLF, I think Hiranandani, Unitech, all these builders, because if Jan Lokpal bill comes in, they'll all be building jails all over India. Because jail building in India will become such a big business. Right. And in one of the negotiations, that's what Pranab Mukherjee said to these people, that look, under this constitution, I cannot do it. So where one of the negotiators on behalf of Anna team said, but we have come to change the constitution. So Pranab Mukherjee said, I don't have the mandate to change the constitution. When you have the mandate, you come and do it. So, and where is Jan Lokpal bill now?
Correct.
Does anybody even make a demand for it? Where is Anna Hazare now? He was hailed as Gandhi. So we said that Gandhi, poor Gandhi, was always in an argument with himself on whether he was a Mahatma or not. Right? Here is Anna Hazare, who has no doubt that he is Mahatma Gandhi. He was a clown, and he had clown written all over him. But if people were willing to be fooled, good luck to them. The same people now look stupid. But the fact is that for taking this position, there was a lot of opprobrium because people immediately say, oh, you must be pro-corrupt.
Right.
But then you have to raise questions. You have to say, okay, there was a scandal in 2G allocations of 2007. For sure, there was a scandal. But could the money loss be 1,76,000 crores? 1,76,000 crores in 2007 was $2 billion more than all of India's defense budget. Army, Navy, Air Force, salaries, pensions, fighter planes, tanks, submarines, everything put together. Could the value of this much spectrum be more than India's defense budget? So just apply the test of reasonableness. So both positions came from fact and conviction. Good reporters. Good reporters. You let good reporters grow. You back them up. Good reporters backed up by selfless editors. And I'm not calling myself selfless. When my paper gets the glory, I get a rub off. But people who work behind the scenes, who make those stories shine, who ask the right questions, and who don't take a byline. So those are the ones who they are the force multipliers for reporters. But you basically first need people in the field, good reporters who are inquisitive, who are fair, and who are also willing to listen to their editors. And in each case, I mean, the first one was for an entire team in Gujarat 2002, an entire team of young reporters. They did a brilliant job, and we basically backed them up here. And one was, I think, Bihar was George Varghese, who's now at the Hindu, and Modasa and Malegaon Blasts was Smita Nair, who's now the Indian Express's Goa correspondent. I think the first thing is that if a newspaper management or owners, if they accept the basic fact that a newspaper runs on journalism, then resources are not such a challenge. But problem arises, I think big problem right now is people see editorial as content. Because editorial is not just something that somebody churns out. Editorial has some heart and soul to it. There is something very touchy-feely about editorial. So you have to be sensitive to that. Now look at, say, publication like the New York Times. I mean, I can always give the example of publications I have worked for in India. But look at the New York Times. The owners take care of the commerce, but they also know that the fuel that drives the New York Times or the Washington Post is their journalism. That is the only product they have to sell. So I think that is what a lot of distortion came into the thinking of media owners. That you can build a brand by selling the newspaper very cheap, by flooding the market. And if you keep the market flooded for long enough, you will build a big brand. You build a brand, but you don't build influence. And an influence, I mean in a positive sense. Sunday reading, Sunday reading has to be different. That's one. Second, Sunday does not have that much politics and government. Sunday does not have a regular opinion page. It has a Sunday opinion page, which is of a different type. So this was to bring in the balance. But basically, that column happened because Kumi was there. That column would not have worked with anybody else. Because Kumi is such an old timer. She's very well networked. She knows what's happening. And she also has a good eye for what will be newsy and what will be fun. And it still continues. I mean, I started knowing him in 1984 with Operation Blue Star. And I was then a very young reporter. But, I spent a lot more time with him after he had retired because we were on many track 2 conference circuits. And I had the benefit of sitting with him for a long time. And this whole idea that what is morale, what is team spirit, what is cowardice, what is courage. And he said that, and then the basic lesson that there are no good armies or bad armies. There are good generals and bad generals. That courage is very infectious as much as cowardice is infectious. Also, that you sometimes, there is no harm in thinking far ahead. So thinking not of today, but thinking far ahead. And then giving something so much momentum that if your ideas, if there are ideas you believe in, then you give those ideas such a momentum and you set such a course that even after you are gone, those ideas continue. So I think those are the lessons to learn. SP and I had become friends. SP was a bit older than me. And this happened around time I was handling, in addition to my English responsibilities, the language editions of India Today. Now, Hindi I know, but Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Gujarati I knew nothing about. So we developed the concept of an outside consultant who functioned like an editorial auditor, who read the issues for us and told us what was the quality of the language, what was getting in there, and gave us ideas about what to do. So there we reached out to SP. SP was free at that point. We reached out to him to help us with our Hindi edition. So then we became friends. And then at some point he started telling me that, look, you covering a lot of these disturbed areas and wars and all that. You've done all that. You should now focus on national politics. So I'd say, oh, I've done several cover stories on national politics. And he'd say, no, not like that. Cover national politics on a regular basis or learn national politics. So we just had some conversations on that. But when this offer from Indian Express came, I was very diffident because I was very comfortable in India Today. And Express was always seemed to be a slightly chaotic place. But SP said, you must go. And he said, if you don't go, then you will keep on going from story to story. But once you go to the Express, it is India's preeminent political paper. You are interested in politics, and you will then develop into a political writer, journalist, etc., etc. And that's a favor he did to me. Without his nudge, I would not have left. Well, I think there is flack every now and then. But in the course of time, people figure out that you don't have an agenda. And people figure out that you're not going against one side or going for another side or vice versa. So I think people figure this over time. But there are hazards, but also learning about politics is fascinating. So in fact, it's SP who first took me to meet Sitaram Kesri when he was Congress president. And he was such a tutor in Indian politics and caste and Hindi heartland, and he was a repository of stories on Indian political history, because politics is a continuum. Politics doesn't end on one day and a new politics begins the next day. It's a continuum. So I think all that was very fascinating.